You ready to take over the world?
Oh boy, that's a tall order.
Let me turn off the doorbell.
We got a few people joining.
Yeah, they're you know how we are. We tend to show up like on time, a little bit late. Is that right?
All right, that's cool.
Hey, hey, hey. All right. So I am very excited for this newest edition of Bring a Hacker to Work Day. Our guest today, I think he might be secretly a rocket scientist, but you know, we'll find out in a little bit.
Oh boy.
Is it Dr. Dane Brown?
That's right.
Okay, Dr.
Yes,
Dane
ma'am.
Brown. All right, cool. So do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, what you've got going on?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to be here. First of all, thank you for having me. This is it's really exciting. I've I went back and watched a couple of the interviews. I see people kind of sharing their experiences. Very inspiring. I enjoy what you do, and I hope to kind of live up to what they've done. For me, as we go through, probably want to remember, I'm a professor, and so I'm used to just kind of getting up and standing in front of a class and lecturing for a long time. So you probably want to do your hosting and kind of direct it where you want it to go, because I may just kind of end up going on.
I am literally a lifelong student, so like even if I sit here and like learn something for the next hour, like I'm a-okay with that, because I think that for me, these conversations give us not just the opportunity to find out about people, but I think also to learn about like our future careers in cybersecurity, even if that leads into being a professor. I also teach computer science and cybersecurity, so I know the vibes.
Yeah,
I
that's
do it
awesome.
online though. So I'm like I said, but I'm not a professor. I mean, like a PhD, I'm not like Doc Martin or anything yet. So maybe
Yeah,
one day.
that's right. That's right. Could actually for the back and forth of this, could you kind of refresh on your organization and kind of like what your goals are and what you are hoping to get out of this?
Oh, sure, absolutely. So Black Girls Hack is we started maybe a couple of years ago to increase diversity in cybersecurity. We provide ethical hacking, mentoring, resume reviews, training, all of the things to help people to achieve world domination, which in my mind is basically like, how are you going to leave the world in a better place than where you found it? What is going to be your impact? What are you doing here? We, as far as I know, get one life, and what are you going to do doing that? What are you working towards? So that's why I always ask people about their world domination plan. But really I think at its core, we're just trying to help people to get into cybersecurity and get the skills they need to be able to both survive there and then also thrive.
Beautiful. I love that. I love that.
Me too.
Honored to be a part of it for sure.
Yeah, my friend Jasmine speaks very highly of you. She's like, you got to get Jam Roots in here, and I was like, okay. And I looked at your bio, and I was like, is he gonna come talk to us? I don't know. Like, I don't know if we're worthy.
Oh, come on. Yeah, no. This is awesome, and love Jasmine. Glad that she's online. So I'll make sure to give her a shout out here as well. So for me, I know you put up a little bit of my bio, but yeah, I have just always been a lifelong tinkerer and interested in computers and security, technology in general. So that's where I kind of directed my education. Obviously all the way up through PhD. Think I'll talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, I'm a professor at the Naval Academy now. I am in it's the cyber science department. We are actually one of the first, if not the first, accredited, cyber science majors in the country. We helped kind of like establish the criteria for that. Over the last few years, the cyber has become really important on the academic side. So that has been a really cool effort to be a part of building from the ground up. Bringing in students who are immensely talented, seeing their growth and development. Has been, I think, a great achievement for me and for all of us as an institution, and getting to continue that. So I have a passion for developing our young students and getting them, those who are kind of motivated and want to do really good work in this area to help get them where they want to go. For me, as a young kid, I was a geeky young kid. I grew up really loving the technology. I wanted to be a hacker. I grew up obviously in the 90s, and some movies like Hackers and Demolition Man and The Matrix, things like that. And it was like the power that these hackers wield. It seemed like a superpower to me, and just being interested in computers and thinking, oh, I could do something like that was really motivating for me. So I kind of kept at it. I started programming actually when I was 12.
Wow.
Early on,
Which was like 4 years ago, I'm pretty sure, because I don't think that you're much older than that now.
Oh wow, that is too kind. You're too kind. Much appreciate you. But yeah, it was seventh grade, math class. We all had our TI calculators. So I had the old TI 85, and then later on I got the TI 83, and it had that program button in the middle of it. And once you discovered, hey, I can put equations in here and formulas to help me do homework and tests and everything like that. But then also this can actually you can unlock power from programming these things and do more than just solving math problems. And of course my mind was blown when I started seeing people actually play games on the calculator. Right, you could inside those programs have like full-blown games, and so we're doing things like penguins and stuff like that. I saw people doing these Z shells, things that made the calculator do more than just these big blocky letters that we normally program in with the main language, which is called TI Basic. It was a version of Basic that TI had brought on. But in order to get that control to play those really cool games, you would need to program in assembly language, right? Which at that time I was hearing about for the first time, and that kind of started my obsession with assembly language and being able to learn it. Not knowing why I wanted to know assembly language, but just like, hey, it'd be really cool to have that power and be able to program these games. And obviously now being a computer engineer, I know like what it is I was supposed to learn and why it'd be interesting to learn these kind of low-level languages like assembly is. And I had no idea what kind of challenge it would be to learn something like assembly language as a 12-year-old. But it was useful to at least have that goal at that point. It got me at least starting programming, and I think I'll talk about this later on. But a lot of people, I think, get interested in cyber and programming, and a lot of people find programming really hard. And I did too. It took me a couple of years to be good at it and be kind of natural at it. But that's I think the fortunate part of starting at 12, right? It didn't matter that I was terrible at programming when I was 13 years old, right? And just having been kind of intrinsically motivated to kind of learn it, even though I was learning on my own, it made it so that when I was taking classes, it seemed much easier. So that's kind of one of the one piece of advice I kind of have for young people. It's like kind of experiment and do it on your own, because a lot of people take their first computer science class, and here I am, a professor, right? Somebody who teaches this stuff. A lot of people take their first computer science class and they're like, oh my gosh, this is really hard. I'm not good at this. And they kind of quit there. And so if anything, you can try to take it in a low stress environment where it's just kind of you on your own and you have the space to fail, but kind of keep trying because you're interested, then definitely do it that way, and then kind of use classes and things like that to enhance you and move you further on the path.
It's funny because that was kind of playing out for me in my senior year of college. Senior year of high school, freshman year of college. We had the 83, and I think they just came out and they started telling us that we couldn't have a TI to use on like for our SATs or whatever, because, people at that point realized that you could actually program, like you're in calculus class and like, you're like, hey, I just need to create this program so it can just basically solve these things for me. And I just had to punch in, some numbers or whatever, or physics or
Yes.
whatever. So, we were definitely doing that. And, I promise you, like I hadn't thought about like assembly language since, I think that was one of my freshman year classes in college, because I did electrical computer engineering. And you're saying this and you're like, yeah, I was doing this when I was 12 years old. And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, like, I was like banging my head up against a freaking wall in Pittsburgh, at
Right.
probably 18 or 19 doing this. And you're like, hey, I'm 12. I got this.
And no, so exactly. That's why I wanted to say it. When I was 12, it was not like I got this. It was like, what is this stuff? And, why is this all so confusing? And it wasn't until I was probably 14. And, I was fortunate. And so this is kind of one of the other things that is really important for me to bring up. I went to high school, and I think I was just fortunate, the place where I was, my high school had computer science classes, and this was in the 90s. Right. So I got to take a couple of computer science classes, got to take AP computer science. Right. And so by the time I got to college, right, all of that stuff was easy at that point, right? Having learned on my own and then taking a couple of classes with people who were really good at it, preparing for AP. It's kind of one of the things that that kind of saddens me the most as a college professor now, because technology has only gotten more important, right? The need to understand computing systems and software has only increased since the 90s. And here we are in the 2020s, and you still have people come into college classes, ask, hey, who's done any program before? And you get very few hands raised. I'm just so confused. Like, how can we not have, how can these programs not be widespread? How can there still be high schools that don't have computer programming classes at all?
Well, so we didn't have any computer science. Again, I'm obviously much older than you, but we didn't have computer science when I was in school. In fact, I tell people all the time that I did my college applications on a typewriter. I hadn't actually seen a computer until I got to college. So, I definitely hadn't done any programming or you know, any of the things that you're like, hey, have you done this? And like, I look at my students today, and I'll say, you're in computer science, like you've never done anything on a Linux terminal before. Like, how are you programming? Because, when I went to school, we were programming on a Linux command line, like GCC type of vibes. And they're like,
Yes,
I've
ma'am.
never used a terminal before. And I'm like, well, how are you doing this? And, and I think that a lot of folks, especially like younger, are, having like the compiler, GUI type compiler vibes for putting their programs together. And I'm like, you guys just don't know the struggle. Like, I don't know how you,
Yeah.
how you're
Absolutely,
doing this.
and we grew up hearing the stories. I know I heard the stories from the last generation of having to do like punched cards and all that kind of stuff. And I'm grateful for that. I hope that we can impart upon the students, each generation, like how much easier it is for you. It's like, I know that you find what the task that you're being given to program like difficult, but you don't have to like sit there and put on these punch cards and like wait in line just to be able to run it and know you have a bug and then have to go back and wait another, like, I don't know, hours or days until you can get time on the computer again on this shared resource. Like,
Yeah, I like to show people that I have like whiteout, because like, again, like if you mess up on a thing, it's like, oh, you're not printing that back out. You're just going to white out the part where you messed up, updated. And because most people are like, what is that? And I'm like, it's whiteout. This is how we fixed all the problem. Like, oh, I messed up on my application. Let me just go back, write that out, and then change the date, or I'll
yes.
never know.
Yep. The old analog days. Yes. So yeah, that was interesting, right? I was also happy or fortunate in high school to, kind of have some visions about what I wanted to do, right? I knew I was interested in computers and hacking and whatnot, but yes, I was a geeky kid, right? I was on the math team, right? I
Of
did
course
all
you
this
are.
computer stuff. I was on math, but you know what?
I
I
was
was
on the
also on
chess
the
team. Like, I know the vibes, like.
right. Yeah, also chess. I love chess now. I wasn't into it then, but I was also on the football team, right? I was also like a lifelong athlete growing up. And I continued playing football even in college. When I went to the Naval Academy, we had a sprint football team there. So one of the other things that's, I'm very passionate about is making sure that young people know. And I'm kind of assuming that your audience is somewhat targeted towards young people. Who is your core audience?
Um, I'd say for the most part, like 25 to 35 is like our biggest demographic. We've got some people on either side of that. But somebody say rum. Yeah, but it's there's some that, like I said, are older, some that are younger.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, some of my messaging is for students, right? I want to be able to tell high school students and college students, kind of what some good ideas are, and I know a lot of us kind of go on, kind of one side or the other of like, oh, I'm gonna go, put a lot of attention into athletics, or I'm going to put a lot of attention to my academics, and it's important for me to let them know, hey, there's no reason you can't do both. You can be a scholar, you can be an athlete at the same time, and you're going to gain a lot from the athletics, right? Even though you're not going to be professional, there's no real reason to give that up. But at the same time, we have to mostly realize that what we're doing in athletics isn't going to be our primary job, right? And not many of us are going to play pro sports. So get those lessons of teamwork, how to deal with loss and how to recognize where your weaknesses are and come back stronger. Which I think is hugely valuable in most work roles that we go into. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
some I was saying they didn't learn how to code until they were 33. That reminds me. I wanted to ask you. So, were your
Yeah.
parents are they programmers? Are they in the tech space,
Nope.
or were you out here doing this all on your own?
Yeah, I was pretty much doing this on my own. My father is medical, and my mother was kind of a little bit finance. She had done computer courses in college, so I did hear some of the punch card horror stories from her. But I mean, she had stopped doing that stuff long before I was born, so she wasn't helping me learn any of the more modern stuff that I was doing at all, and wasn't getting into it. So it kind of, at least it was there as a background, but no, I mostly learned on my own until I, found some mentors and teachers in high school that could, help me further along to where I wanted to be. Um, of course, it was a different time than now, right? Now there's just so many resources. You just get online, go on YouTube, find blogs. I mean, I still use those, to this day. As tools to kind of sharpen little areas that I want to improve in. It was certainly much harder then, and I want to kind of encourage people who are struggling now. It's like, just make sure that you are using the resources. There's so many people who you can reach out to. There's organizations like this that want to provide help. If you are interested, right, there's going to be a path for you to get there.
Yeah, so you mentioned resources. I know some of the folks in the squad have been like expressing some difficulty recently trying to figure out, with so many resources available, think like, the Try Hack Me's, the Hack the
Yeah.
Box, the Range Force, all of the different things out there that are available to help, you learn and grow in the cyberspace. How do you like kind of direct your students, or how do you yourself, kind of prioritize, what it is that you're working on? Like, what does that look like for you?
Absolutely. Great question. I think this is a little bit of the advantage to working in the academic space, which is that, we have the freedom to kind of at least say we're going to stick to the fundamentals, because there's always going to be some new resource, some new tool, something that comes along and says, oh, okay, you just got to do this. Right. But, as if you've been through this industry, the tool of the day, the framework of the day, all those things kind of, they come and they go, right? You may get lucky and you have, okay, hey, this is, the tool that, people are going to use for many years to come, right? But most of the cases, these things are kind of transient. But if you understand the fundamentals, right, then you're always going to be in good shape, right? You'll be able to learn whatever the tool of the day is and use it for what it is. And when that's not hot anymore, right, then you're going to be able to move on to the next thing or create the next thing that you need, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what I've said as far as the skills for cyber goes, I've tried to think about this and codify this. I'm sure this isn't unique to me, but I think first of all is programming. right? I don't want to say first. There's no order for this. I think it is important, especially on the technical side, right? So obviously there's many paths to success in the field of cybersecurity. It's pretty broad, right? But on the technical side, I think it is important to know a bit of programming and how code works. I want to go into the differences between being a programmer and knowing how to code, because there's definitely a distinction there. But having some ability to create what you need and understand how the software you are using works, and how it might not work, where the issues might come up. I think you should also have a good idea about computer administration, right? Just how the system itself works, right? Be comfortable with various operating systems, whether it's Windows, Linux, so forth, right? Being able to do things at the GUI, at the command line, and knowing what all the different administrator tools are, different privilege levels, that kind of stuff, right? I think, obviously I'm on the academic side, but I think a lot of people in the industry got their start being like help desk people. I hear this story a lot. They're like, I started at the help desk entry level, right? And you just had to figure out how everything worked. And, people were able to really build on that to become experts because they understood, in depth, the kind of computer administration, how to fix and solve problems and identify them.
Yeah, I think the part that people, don't realize when they're looking at things like computer science and cyber is like the only real difference between like somebody who's considered like a noob and then somebody who's considered like a shmee or an expert is a whole lot of practice, right? And people, yeah, you have to actually put the time in. And people kind of like want to approach it like kind of the same way that I approach like, oh, it's getting summertime, I need to, get ready for the summer, and then I'll be like, I can't just undo all of the cheeseburgers I've done over the past 3 months instantly, right? Just because I declare it so. It really takes some consistent effort and time, and just actually being in the gym, I think, which a lot of people find difficult because I think especially like in the age of like Twitter and social media where people are like, yeah, I got a 6-figure bag. You can do it too. You don't need any, experience or certs or education or anything. You just need like 2 Q-tips and like, I don't know. What are those? One of those, I can't remember the batteries that have like, is it an A battery where it has like the 2 polarized things at the top of them? Like they go in like the fire extinguisher, like not the fire extinguisher, the
the like 9 volt?
The 9 volt batteries. Yeah, like just you can't just like rig something together. So you I think you also do something with is it like the cyber command? Is that right?
Oh yeah. I think I can come to quite a bit of that. Just sorry, as far as so I don't lose my train of thought. Because I think as far as like the skills go, just a kind of complete answer in that, right? If we have, I think everyone should have a little bit of programming, knowing the computer administration. I think beyond that, right, when you start to develop, I think computer architecture is important as well, right? Going down to that next level, because once you understand a bit about how the system functions, then kind of really understanding like what other parts are, right? How you build the computer, and how does the data kind of moving through it? Where is it stored? How is it accessed? All those kind of things, right? Just kind of understanding low level a little bit about the hardware is important, and then networking, right? So
Sure.
most of what we do on a computer is using the internet, right? Using Bluetooth or Wi-Fi and or some kind of networked medium. So having a good understanding of how the addressing works and subnetting to the different protocols that are used, right? It's pretty critical, right? So those are kind of like the I think the technical core of what you need to know getting into the industry. And then on top of that, just being someone who's driven, having good critical thinking skills, right? And being kind of adaptive and resilient, right? So that you can kind of work through a problem and be able to deal with failures and getting things wrong, but realizing that you can kind of eventually get to the right solution.
Right.
Yeah.
I feel you. So on this topic too, I get distracted so easily. I think I've got like some undiagnosed ADHD going on. Somebody asked, how do you introduce coding to students who may not have easy access to the internet? Because I think even today, sometimes folks don't have that. So how do you introduce coding to those students?
Yeah, certainly, right. Most of us learn. Well, I don't know about most of us, but before a certain time, all the coding resources weren't on the internet, right? And so you can still do this, right? Just like you were saying before, if you just get a Linux environment installed, right? Just a command line. If you have GCC and a text editor, you can get things done, right? You get a couple of books, right? Whatever language it is. If it's going to be Python, if it's going to be C, something like that. You just kind of work through the activities, and you can do all that without having to necessarily go online for most of what you're doing.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. So Cyber Command,
Oh
when you're
yes,
not
okay.
teaching, oh, I'm sorry, when you're not teaching, you're doing Cyber Command, right? So what does that look like for you?
Oh, so Cyber Command is so I was a naval officer, right, when I graduated Naval Academy. I did submarines for a while. I didn't get to really do cyber directly there, but even as I've come back teaching at the academy, right, I've still been a reservist, and so in the reserves, I've tried to work on some cyber roles that kind of complement what I'm doing on the cyber side with my students at school. So like even when I got activated, I went and did some cyber work when I was at Central Command, and and then after that, I did a tour at Cyber Command, which is right near us in Fort Meade, right? Um, I've gotten to look at not only the academic part that I work in day to day, right, but also kind of the operational aspects of cyber. What our country needs, right? What things that our leaders kind of need to know to be able to make good decisions, and have gained a lot from that, right? I've thought that that's where I could really make my biggest contribution with the knowledge and the skills that I have. So I try to continue to work with throughout throughout the areas of the government that can be assisted with us, whether it's working with students on research projects or capstones, and just kind of helping us advance what the state of the art is and what our capabilities can be.
Yeah, I think for me as a lifelong student and also as I think as an educator,
Yeah.
I feel like the part of the reason why I've kept going back to school, kept getting degrees, was because I wasn't getting what I needed or what I thought I needed in order to enter the job field.
Yes.
So I was like, oh well, maybe if I go here. So I did computer science, not computer science. I did cybersecurity, and then I went and did something in digital forensics, and then it was like I'm not getting I guess the hands-on piece, right? So I feel like in computer science, in cybersecurity, at least what I've seen from either an instructor or from as a student, it's not very hands-on, and it's not basically in the same type of realm as where the industry expects you to be when you graduate from school, right? So you guys said that you did the first cyber science major,
Yes.
and that you guys are you know are basically trend setting in this area. What does that look like for your students? Like, how is that different than I guess some of the traditional computer science majors, or the traditional cybersecurity majors, maybe in the last couple of years? Because again, there wasn't really cybersecurity when I went to college, but how has that changed, I think, today?
Yeah. So it certainly is more practical and has more of an operational focus, right? While still, we have to, tread the line, right? Of it's still an academic discipline, right? So, it's not going to be as theoretical as like what a general computer science major is going to be, or even some of the engineering majors. So we are giving our students, a lot of hands-on, with programming, and also working with embedded systems and things like that, and also being able to think about. So our program specifically is intended to be multidisciplinary, so that our students get a technical foundation, right? So probably about 70% of our major is technical, right? Doing programming, working with systems and devices, and understanding kind of those fundamentals, but also then the other 30% of it is them getting the really so what on top of it, right? Answering the questions, using what to be able to make good decisions, right? Think about legal framework, think about how it should affect policies, and so forth, right? How you, and of course ethics through it, the social and human factor side of cybersecurity, which is what we're going to need in jobs as obviously on the military side as leaders, right? But then obviously as you're managing these kind of projects in industry later on in your career.
Yeah. So how do you help, I guess, outside of the curriculum itself? How would you direct your students to make moves based on what you see in the industry today? Do you think that they're getting what they need, as far as just being able to go to school and get their degree? Like, does that, I think someone who graduates with a cyber science major, does that drop them off like ready to enter, the workforce? Or how do you supplement that
Yeah,
to get what you need?
definitely. And so the answers are yes, I think so. Um, Fortunately or unfortunately for our students specifically, that's not much of an issue because they are. I don't know if you know how the Naval Academy works, but they have to serve for a minimum of 5 years after graduation,
Hmm.
right? So they're going to be a naval officer for a while. That's coming out of these academies, and so after that point, yes, they're going to be able to take their skills, but they'll in many cases maybe need some refreshing or some more OJT on the path. But when they are finished, a lot of times they are ready, right? We have programs where we do internships for them, right, throughout the summers. So they go and work with some of the defense contractors or some of the companies doing work with some of the government agencies. They work with companies doing cyber, kind of like in our local area.
Hmm.
And we get great feedback from them. They are able to contribute really effectively to those teams. Um, uh, and and they work on design projects, senior design and capstone projects in their senior year as they're doing really cool kind of operational stuff. And companies are coming and they're in many cases giving them some working on some real product or delivering something that is turns out to be really useful to them. We've had students be able to also publish academic papers as a result of what they've done in some of this research. So I think we can kind of see the benefits of this. Not to mention, for whatever you count competitions, our students have done well both on cyber policy competitions as well as technical cyber, kind of capture the flag type of competitions that we put them in over the years.
So speaking of capture the flags,
Yeah.
do you guys, see I guess the future in, I guess, as far as the gamification of cybersecurity as something that you guys are promoting, or is it just like, hey, this is something to just test your skills? What is, like, I guess, your strategy towards, like CTFs as far as, as an educator?
Yeah. So I can speak for me, right? For me, I think it's just a great way to be able to develop your skills, right? To know what is kind of important out there, right? A lot of the CTFs, they're bringing out kind of cutting edge, vulnerabilities in certain ways or things that you're seeing over and over again that you just have to know about. And so the exposure to that outside of just, hey, here's what we're covering in the academics setting where we're going over just fundamentals. For those of you, and this isn't everybody, right? Not everyone joins those teams that play CTFs. We have a cybersecurity team. I'm the coach for it. But we try to recruit students who really enjoy doing this and want to go to the next level, spend a little extra time doing it, or just like we were on math team in high school, or like you were on the chess team. These are kids who I just love hacking, and I want to at the end of a school day, and we have a long school day. At the end of the school day, I want to spend another hour and a half, right, looking at a lecture on C and pointers, um, and just continuing to sharpen my skills and be ready to compete in these competitions. So I think there's nothing better than that for learning. I can give you my personal experience with CTFs, which was, um, you know, I'm an electrical engineer, right? I got my master's in computer engineering in '06 from Naval Postgraduate School, and I was always interested in hacking. I was already interested in security side, right? I knew about the tools. I knew about things going on in the industry, but when I played my first CTF years later, right? I'm pretty sure I didn't score 1 point. you know, I couldn't solve anything, and I was like, wow, I felt like I'm pretty knowledgeable. I know how this stuff works. Why wasn't I able to figure anything out on the CTFs? And you go back through and you can look at write ups that people have done, see how they solve problems, and and you realize that it's a slightly different skill set than just applying, the what you learn in the classroom. You have to also apply. Remember, like I said, the critical thinking, right, and the ability to kind of just learn on the fly, right? Yes, you might have the idea of how things work, right, in a general sense, but you need to learn a specific protocol, right, to be able to solve this problem, or you need to learn a specific file format or something like that, and you need to just go and look through the documentation, right? And so I think it's valuable for that, not learning to just kind of rely on, okay, here's what we got, out of the classroom, which is valuable and makes reading that documentation easier, right? It makes learning that protocol easier, right? But you still have to do that work each time.
Yeah, I think that CTFs are in my mind a very great equalizer, because even me, thinking in like, hey, I'm pretty smart. I did computer engineering undergrad, and I the first time I did my I captured the flag, which was only like maybe a few years ago at this point. I was like eek, like I
Yeah.
I I thought that I was smart, and I'm looking at these things, and I'm like, I don't know what to do. And what's funny is I'll tell people that my first capture the flag, I think real one, was National Cyber League. And I had not started learning how to use a Kali VM by then. So I basically did the entire thing on just the internet, just tools that are available, like available to everybody. um, and I did okay, but I think that what you said as far as like the approach to problem solving, I think it's quite different than the other types of problems that we're traditionally asked to solve. And I think that once you get the mindset of how to approach problems, I guess from a CTF perspective, it becomes a lot easier in terms of, what to look for, and how people design these questions. And I think for me, I actually helped, my organization helped Blacks in Cyber for their, I think it was Capture the Flag for, I want to say maybe WinterCon last year. And we were helping to design the questions, and I'm sitting here like, okay, what are people not going to do this? And I'm like just sitting here putting together like, encryption, like Russian dolls, where it's like, something that is encoded and coded and encoded. Like, people are not going to think about this, because you have to have a certain, the approach to those solving those types of problems that, it takes, again, it's something that you got to be in the gym, it's something you got to practice. And a lot of people, I think if they get involved in them, people are very intimidated. They'll say, like your experience, hey, I did this and I had no clue. And then, they'll say, hey, this isn't for me. And not look at the write-ups, or, the
Yeah.
the way that people actually solve them. Because, if I got something wrong, I was so arrogant, like when I was growing up, like if there was something that I got wrong, I'd be like, oh, you're gonna have to show me how this is wrong. Like
Yes.
it's not enough that I would be like, oh, I got that wrong, move on. Like, nah, like I was ready to, argue my teachers to the ground. And so I have to actually look and see, what the approach was, and what I could have done. And I think that a lot of times people don't do that. I think feel like computer science and cybersecurity are one of those things that you kind of have to have, perseverance, and not be afraid to like get put on your butt a couple of times.
Exactly. Exactly right. Yeah. That's good. And I wanted to also kind of um, go a little deeper on what you're talking about with like the approach and what you're getting out of these capture the flags, because especially, I mean, you got to think about what your goal is, right? I think there's kind of maybe two goals of people who play capture the flag. There's one is like, oh, I want to score as many points as I can and prove to everybody how lead I am. And then there's people who are doing it to kind of learn, right? To prove to yourself that you have those skills and that you can know what's important to know. That's the way I play them, right? I'm never going to be the guy that like goes out and wins the CTFs and gets like the most points, but I because I approach things in a very methodical manner, and I do it like I'm making a lecture for my students, right? Every problem that I solve, I can tell you exactly how and retrace all the steps. I make a folder and a whole write up for everything that I do, and I use it for that, right? To kind of show very methodically, here's how this what this vulnerability is, and here's how it works, and here's how you can exploit it. And obviously I use it for that, because then I turn around and use them in class and assign them in the same way. So like when you have a CTF problem, I think it's important, if you're trying to say, hey, I'm learning, and I have this skill, there's unfortunately or unfortunately, there's a lot of tools that have been developed over the time to kind of make doing these things easier, right? And so I generally would do this, like I don't even use Kali or anything anymore, right? I just do a vanilla Ubuntu, and maybe I'll install what I need to, and I write scripts as I go along, right, up from scratch, just kind of developing it. And I think it's an important thing to do, to kind of like based off the fundamentals, develop all of these, develop the tools yourself, and really figure out what's happening in the problem. Because a lot of times there's tools that will auto solve things for you. It's like you can throw this thing, it'll do all the browser exploits, or it'll do the these like crypto things that will try all the different algorithms and stuff like that. But like, if you just get the answer, if you just like hit a button and it pops a flag out, like, what did you learn from that process?
True. True. And I think it's interesting, because I think that, for me, working as a pen tester, I see on an almost daily basis people spitting out tools to make a process more easier. And I feel like for some people, who are like, hey, there's a tool for this, there's a tool for this, there's a tool for this, you know, they'll get to the point where, they almost become, kind of like script kiddies, like, hey, there's a tool, I can do
Yes.
this, and then, without the tool, it's kind of like, well, what do I do? Right.
Right. What if I don't have access to that tool?
Right.
What if I can't put it in this environment?
Exactly. And I think for me, that's the point that kind of like kicks some people in the butt, because, I know it kicked me in the butt when I first started, because it would be like, hey, I'm used to, having a Kali box where I can do this, and I've got all these tools installed, and I can do all of these things. Right. But, a gentleman a few years back said something to me about like, actually like, living off the land, which, was his
Yes.
version of basically, like you said, taking a vanilla Ubuntu box, and then, basically doing what you need to do on that, without all of the pre-installed things, because a lot of environments won't allow that, like people who learn like, hey, the only way that you can do scanning is when the nmap, are going to get like, sidekicked if
Yes.
nmap scanning is not allowed, right?
Right.
So, when for me, learning in, like I said, being largely self-taught, it's like you learn, hey, you do an nmap scan, right? And then you do like a derb or something like that, right? And then you do this, and then you do this, right? But what do you do if you can't use nmap, right? Because that's our whole process that we're taught, right? Which I think is why it's interesting for people to kind of understand, and be able to create these tools also, but like,
Right.
I don't think that everybody needs to know computer science, like hot take, or
Yep.
know how to program. Like it's
Yep.
possible to do what we do without that. But I also feel like you have to at least have some understanding about what's going on, right? Because
Yes.
when we talk about things like, white box testing, right? If you actually do get access to the code, or whatever, the files, like what are you looking for? Do you know, what it is that you're looking for? Because
Yes.
otherwise I think everything is always a black box if you don't, right? So I feel like it makes your life a little bit easier. But people, I think, try to put any barriers, like, hey, I can't do this because XYZ, right? I'm not a programmer, or I'm not technical, or I don't like math, or
Yes.
I've honestly heard over the last couple of years a lot of reasons what that people tell themselves that they can't do something. And I'm the person that's like sitting on their shoulder, like, just do it, like, just jump out there, just practice, and just keep doing it. And I think that you will be fine, right? And I tell people, actually, just as a um, almost like one of those tests that tell you, like, what job you should take, like, do a capture the flag, figure out which area interests you,
Yes.
because that can help you to figure out, like, hey, I might want to do this, right? But then for the people who are not, who don't like games, they'll kind of be like, how is playing a game going to help me figure out what I'm going to do with my life?
Yeah.
um, which is crazy for me. My husband is actually a gamer. So like, he plays games. He's probably gaming like right now as we speak, right? So,
Nice.
it's like I for me, I like games. Um and if you can like learn a lot and try to figure out what it is in a competitive way, I'm all about that. But again, I realize that not everybody is. So I guess like, what do you do? Like if you're not interested in capture the flags, how can you, or if you're not interested in the gamification, what advice would you give people who are starting out in the field? Like, hey, I'm interested, but CTFs are not really my thing.
Yeah, I think, you know, obviously there's stuff out there for everybody, right? I'm a huge believer in CTFs, obviously, and I coach a team that does it, and we work on these things all the time. And I think being engaged, I mean, who doesn't like games? I mean, I know some people are like, oh, I'm not a gamer, but everyone downloads some games on their phone. I promise you, right? And everybody's playing games to some extent, so you'll be able to find, I think, something that you like. Um, that said, right, I mean, there's ways to kind of dive in there, right? I mean, a lot of people kind of poo-poo CTFs and say, oh, that's not going to help you do, like, you could go straight into trying to do bug bounties work and finding real vulnerabilities, and they say, oh, that's more real world. But I think this kind of helps you, if you're doing it the right way, learn what those things are and learn what to look for, right? I look at it as practice, right? For the people who are athletes growing up, it's, you're going to practice, right? You're sitting there, you're shooting free throws, right? And you're developing muscle memory. And I think that's the thing that you want to be able to use the CTS for. Whether you love playing games, right? Working on your fundamentals is going to help you, be a better player.
Yeah.
For those, I think we're just assuming maybe everyone knows what CTFs are, but it's capture the flag challenges, and a lot of times you get like a Jeopardy format. So there's a bunch of questions that are up, and you can kind of click on the one you want to work on, and they cover things like first, computing and operating system kind of fundamentals, right? Make kind of miscellaneous challenges that just make sure that you know how to use a computer, as an administrator at a high level. Then there's, challenges in web exploitation, if that's something you're interested in learning. Cryptography, forensics, digital forensics are popular. And then you'll find, as you get deeper, reverse engineering challenges, my favorite, and binary exploitation. So all the way up to how do I actually hack stuff? Okay, I knew Jasmine was going to pop in with her web is life. Okay, she always gets me with that. So she's our web expert, and we go a little back and forth. But yeah, I mean, all these skills are useful, and whatever it is that you find yourself clicking with the most, work more on those challenges. If you don't love playing the games, read books, right? I have a ridiculous library of all kinds of hacking books, and read blogs, right? Work through different things, right? Go to Bone Hub or and just download those boxes and kind of work through them. There are several things you can do that aren't just like playing a CTF if you don't want to have that challenge in the gamified way.
Mm-hmm.
Going on what you said before, you mentioned your hot take of not everyone needs to learn programming. I agree with you, right? Not everyone needs to be a programmer. So I think I said earlier I was going to try to come back to this point of this distinction between like programming and coding, because at this point in my life, like I told you where I started, right? I've been programming for over 25 years, right? But I would certainly not consider myself a
You ain't more than
professional programmer.
25-year-old.
Right? I would not consider myself a professional programmer, right? I wouldn't go do, a software engineering job. That's not where everyone needs to get, right? What I think is everyone needs to kind of understand just the basics of how software, is constructed, right? What a for loop is, what a variable is, those kind of basics, just so that if there's something you need to do with a computer, right, you could code that function if you want to, or you could analyze that, right? If you're doing a white box assessment and you do have access to code, you should be able to know what it's saying to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So just going with, you were talking about, your fitness thing and getting ready for the summer as an analogy, right? I look at it as having, some level of code literacy, right? Or having that code fitness, everyone should be able to run a mile, right? That doesn't mean you're going to be like running a marathon in the Olympics or anything, right? It's like being able to so everyone should have the ability to, write an essay, right? But it doesn't mean you're going to be a professional author and writing these books. And I think that's the kind of level we need to get to with code, right? Everyone's not shying away from it. You could go and understand or write a little bit of code if you needed to, even if you're not going to go and be a professional, software engineer.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So
my other side of the hot take, I guess.
You mentioned that you were programming at a pretty young age. I think you said it was like 12 or 13, right?
Yeah.
You were doing computer science, Naval Academy, Naval Postgraduate School.
Yes.
Now you're back at the Naval Academy actually as a professor, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So you knew this was coming. World domination. What does the next step look like for you? You're a professor now. I don't know, like if you guys do that in tours, like they'll have you sit there for a few years, or whether it's a possibility for forever. But what does world domination look like from where you're at?
Yeah, I am a tenure track professor, so I'm there as a complete a civilian. So this could be my forever job if if I do make tenure, but get published enough over the next few years. So world domination for me, I think, looks like helping bridge the digital divide a little bit more, right? And working with like organizations like what you have. Right. I also do a lot of work with the Minority Innovation Weekend out of National Society of Black Engineers in Baltimore. I think if we can work on expanding initiatives for computing at the K-12 level, I think that would be huge, right? I think I mentioned before, I think every high school should at least have, right, if not full on require every student to take some kind of course in computing and programming, specifically, right, so that they can graduate at least with that base level of technical competence, right? So that's my goal. Every high school student's at least done it, at least tried it, regardless of what the language is.
But right? But what about you? What is it that actually drives you? Like, what are you like working towards? Like, have you like achieved all of your goals and you're like, I'm just chilling until retirement, or what's next?
No, well, okay, so it's interesting you asked it that way, right? I mean, I have so many goals and so many ideas, right? They're just constantly kind of like in flux, and what I'm realizing is, and the way I wanted to say this is why I've become so passionate about working with young people, right? Is you get so much better chance of doing this if you scale it out, if you spread it out, right? I'm able to have students work on different projects, all these different things that are interested, ideas that I have, seeing, hey, is this something that can work? Is this going to play out? Right. And I don't have 10 of me, and there's no way I could accomplish everything that I wanted to, but if you can kind of inspire these people, if you can help develop them, right, those are the ones who are going to kind of push to that next level. So that's I guess my plan of world domination is doing it, this happy, I don't want to say, for lack of a better term, having a botnet out there, but having like a lot of people who are kind of like-minded, right, that can
a botnet
share the vision.
People who are trying to make improvements and improve the world, like that you inspire to go out and do great things.
Exactly. Also spreading the word about things like free education and opportunities. So I was going to talk a little bit about finances and stuff like that, but obviously we have a major problem with debt, right? College debt, debt in all the other places in society. And so a major thing about me is that I've gone through, I did all 3 levels of education, right? I did my bachelor's, I did my master's, I did my PhD without paying a penny, right? This is, Uncle Sam paid for all of that for me, right? Obviously the Naval Academy is somewhere that you don't generally pay, you don't pay at all, right? But you pay back with service, with your time serving in the military. Going to Naval postgraduate schools is much the same way, just a larger time commitment. But while in that time that you're serving and paying back that time, you're still getting a paycheck, right? A pretty good paycheck, and you're not saddled with debt from paying for your college tuition. So that's a great way of doing it.
You see me hiding?
No, I see you hiding. This is why I want to spread this word, right? And and then going to the PhD, right? I got to this point of where I'm back, teaching at the academy, and they wanted help. I'm doing something that they find valuable. And this is what I think, right? There wasn't a program for this. Isn't like going undergrad to a service academy. I made a deal where, they sent me to get my PhD so that I could come back and be a tenure track professor, right? So the Naval Academy ended up paying for my, for my whole PhD in order to do that. And again, just paying back with time that I'm going to do anyway, because this is what I want to do for my job, right? So me working towards tenure is basically my payback for them paying for my PhD. So being able to do all three levels without debt, I mean, this is what I encourage people to do. Right? There's someone, whatever you want to do, if it's valuable, then there's someone who will find value in that, right? Who will finance it for you, right? If you can make that deal work.
Yeah, and I think that for the people who are not in high school, right, not at the ability now where they can say, hey, I want to go do the military, I think that there's still a lesson for that, in terms of jobs will pay for you to get training. They will pay for you to go get education. A lot of people are out here like struggling, like, hey, how do I how do I afford to be able to pay for this? But, I've had jobs that like, pay 12,000 a year towards school, or pay, $5,000 a year towards training, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
like you're saying, you're going to be working anyway. And, for the most part, those companies will say, hey, I will, pay for this year for year, right? So it's the same type of like kind of service for, repayment, so that you can kind of avoid some of that debt. And, I think that as people are looking for jobs, they can be, I guess, more strategic in terms of, which one of these companies have the best tuition reimbursement, or have the best, training policies to kind of like avoid, some of these debts. But again, you have to be able to get into the door, to do that, right? And I think largely my organization is trying to help people to be able to, actually get through the door, to get enough experience to get into those jobs, so that they can then, take advantage of all the training and the educational benefits. Because I think it's important. I honestly can get on a soapbox probably for the rest of my life, to talk about, why getting all of this, student loan debt was not the move, right? Or, while getting debt at all, but I feel like,
Yeah.
for me, we weren't taught financial management, right? Um, I actually went to school, and there were people, I feel like, on every section of the campus that were like, hey, apply for a credit card, here's a t-shirt, right? Or hey, apply for a credit card, here's some free pizza, or something like that, right? And I was like, okay. So I had all the credit cards, and it's just like that impacts your credit score, right? And I feel like a lot of times those lessons aren't taught. So, I think I definitely appreciate your message, and your idea that you don't have to pay a whole lot of money to get to world domination, right? There are other ways to work around it if you're strategic, strategic approaches to problem solving, like even when it comes to like financial things. So,
That's
I
right.
I definitely can dig that.
That's awesome, right? And then my third leg of it is, just kind of being in this phase where, I want to partner as much as I can, right? Help, advising young startups and small businesses, that are kind of in this field and need some help. That's what I'm doing a little bit with Minority Innovation Weekend, and I think that's another place where I can, really help contribute as much as I possibly can, right? Helping working with young people, right, and helping them get the skills that they need, and then helping companies, make decisions, uh, maximizing the benefit of my education experience to as much as I possibly can.
Yeah,
Financial,
I
I see
actually,
somebody's talking about financial literacy should be taught in school. Yes, I 100%
yeah.
agree, right? Like along with that programming class, right? Have a financial literacy class, right? I wasn't until I was in college. I was the same way, but I got a credit card when I was like 16, maxed out, and I had no idea about credit or what the effect of that was going to be. And we fortunately at school, I'll give Naval Academy credit for this, right? They had someone come every summer in their briefs, giving us these financial briefs, and teaching us about that we should need to stay out of debt. We need to learn how to live within our means, right? You spend less money than you make a budget if you need to. How to pay yourself first and take the first cut out of your paycheck that you never see. into your long-term savings into retirement, right? And learning how to kind of invest in long-term things. I think this wasn't part of it, but everyone should be kind of investing in real estate or investing in companies that you frequent, right, or believe in, right? If you are if you find yourself shopping at Target twice a week because you just need to pop in and grab something and you can't leave without having spent $100, right? Then you probably want to be investing in Target, have some stock so that you're benefiting from that as well.
Amazon for me, but
Amazon.
I feel the vibes.
Another great one, right? Exactly, right? So just understanding the importance of wealth. I think some of us grow up with like a stigma on what like being rich is, and I think that's a completely different thing than being wealthy and managing your life so that you're not living paycheck to paycheck and you have a little bit of breathing room, right? And you can achieve long-term goals and be able to be a long-term thinker and planner.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I mentioned last week on Twitter, I was like, my goal in life is to be able to go shopping on Instacart without checking my checking account balance first to make sure that it's not going to go south.
Right.
So a couple of notes. Someone said Naval Research Lab will pay for your master's and your PhD. So you guys can check that out if you're not
Awesome.
in our Zoom. All right, so we are coming up on 3:00 now. So I wanted to thank you. Does anybody have any last minute questions for Dr. Brown? But like I said, I wanted to thank you for coming out and hanging out with us. Jasmine, again, she stays with the dope ideas, including like the web is life, as far as like, putting people who can come out and hang out with us and teach us, what different careers look like in this space. So,
yes, Jasmine is awesome.
She is. We look. I agree. We can both, stand on top of that hill because I think she's amazing.
Yeah, and I saw Naomi also said EYL, Earn Your Leisure, talks about this. So yes, as a resource, highly recommend that channel. Right, go over, check out Earn Your Leisure YouTube channel, and they have people talk about every single financial topic, how to set you up, saving, investing. Great place to start.
So Jasmine wanted to know, where do people who are interested in reverse engineering go to learn assembly? I know I had books
Yeah.
that are probably as old as I am, but where in 2022, what does that look like?
Yeah, I don't know if the answer is different in 2022 than it was years back. I think I tried to read those assembly books as well, and I've gone through several of them. And I think it's good to start with here's what all the commands are. But I think it's easier, just like we love CTFs, it's easier to do it kind of in a practical, hands-on way where you're going towards something. I thought the best primer I had to really get into assembly was just when I went through Hacking: The Art of Exploitation. Right, so that was a major book, right? And it starts at the beginning of like, hey, here, let's do a little refresher in C, but let's go ahead and compile the code, look at what the assembly is like, so you can see exactly what it's doing, and you kind of learn it. And hey, what happens when you're using pointers? What happens when you're using all these different constructs? What does that look like in assembly? I thought that was a really great hands-on way to do it, and then end with here's how we do an exploit using that.
Yeah, I actually have that book on the top shelf of my my bookcase right now. I'm sitting here pointing at it like, cool. All right. So again, Dr. Brown, I thank you. I appreciate you for coming out. I'm probably going to drop this on our kids channel as well, because I think the people who
Yes.
are getting ready to go into high school would find this very helpful. But I think that you dropped a lot of gems for people who are just trying to find direction in their career as well. So
Awesome.
I appreciate you, and I thank
I appreciate
you.
that. Yes.
And I hope everybody enjoys